advanced state that the programme was in, all usual channels to source such agency workers were followed, including using the corporate contract and specialist technical agencies. The post being referred to is an interim agency worker position as a programme manager, responsible for specific work streams of the ERP programme, including data migration, training and communications, for which Christine Reid was uniquely well placed to undertake at the time. The engagement was in relation to a very specific role in the programme and at a critical point which developed unexpectedly and urgently, which required additional programme management capacity, specific project and subject matter knowledge with the relevant and direct experience which the contracted pay party was able to very cost effectively, uniquely and immediately provide at that particular point in time.
Councillor Count, you have gone over. You've got much more to say?
I have. All I can say, Madam Chairman, is I will publish the full response. I'm satisfied with the response, and I think I'll publish on the web. Thank you.
After more than 7 years, LGSS still operates without a bank account or a proper accounting ledger. The Best Value report also recommended that Northamptonshire review its relationship with LGSS to ensure clearer accountability, especially since the arrangement is not producing any savings. My supplementary question: will the leader now publicly confirm that in line with Northamptonshire, this council has given full consideration to Mr. Caller's recommendations and is now reviewing its relationship with the opaque and unaccountable LGSS, including seeking reimbursement for its share of the £54,000 paid to KPMG for its failed audit of the 2014-15 LGSS accounts? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've been in a similar situation before, and I've answered questions from Mr. Ransom before, and so has this council, so has Northamptonshire, and there's been extensive communication. Whenever I'm asked to, shall we say, shoot from the hip with response, this has been itemised, taken apart fully at a later date, where specific words are giving potentially 2 different meanings, or maybe the full intent what didn't get across, or maybe they weren't perhaps 110 degrees, 110 percentage points accurate enough for a full response. I therefore, in response to this question, suggest that I give a full written response, rather than the verbal response on the day, that can be drafted up by officers, that I can go through line by line with them to ensure that we give an appropriate and full response. I would like to add to this chamber at this present point in time, it is your right, Mr. Rowson, to continue to challenge us. In fact, it's your right to use the full auspices of this council, such as the audit committee that has looked at comments in the past, the external audit committee, the Secretary of State, and I'm satisfied that where we have been in the past is to fine-tune our business and also to respond to all those questions. But I would like to add to this council that to date we have spent in excess of £100,000 answering all of the questions that have been put to us. And I have to, if I'm going to continue to be asked questions, I would like to put a question to you, Mr. Rowson. Do you continue to believe that the money spent answering these questions is better spent this way rather than vulnerable people, vulnerable children, vulnerable adults, potholes? Because I am not satisfied that the defences made by all these different bodies should continue in the same way. However, I do believe it's your right, and if you do discover the smoking gun that you believe is in there, I will, as I have done today, really examine the answers that I've been given. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rowson, thank you for your question. We'll next move on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is on petitions, and allows members of the public to present petitions in accordance with the agreed protocol. The petition asking Cambridgeshire County Council to fund the Fields Nursery was received by the deadline to allow a spokesperson to speak, and it does contain over 50 signatures. The petition organiser will now be able to speak for 3 minutes. Could I please ask, details of the petition have been circulated electronically to all members and published on the Council's website. Can I please ask Valerie Ashton to speak to the petition? You have 3 minutes.
I'm a mum of my son Stephen at the Fields Nursery School and Childcare in Cambridgeshire, Abbey Ward, Cambridge. And I'd like to ask if the County Council can do 3 things. 1, we need more funds from central government for nursery schools and childcare. Cambridgeshire is one of the lowest funded councils in the whole of the UK, and it's just not fair. A child in Cambridgeshire gets £1,300 less per year for early years than a child in Westminster. That's not fair. We need a dedicated representative to go to the central government and ask and work on this. And 3rd, we need advance notice of when finances are changing. Obviously, the nursery schools are running a very tight budget, and if things happen within the year, they can plan for it in advance. They need more than just a few months' notice to take that into account. The benefits of the Fields is that they have experienced staff. They have, the nursery school has teachers with PGCEs and speech and language support, and they provide intervention for children who are struggling. A focus on education that the private sector does not provide. And this need for education in a diverse area is very important because this can really bridge the gap between the children who are less well off at school and how they can reach school level, can catch up to their peers when they reach school. So we really need to help these children. So because the Fields were struggling, they had to propose cutting hours, most of which those proposals were reversed due to raising fees too high that might well be seen, might possibly be the most expensive nursery school and childcare provider in Cambridge now, in Cambridgeshire. These fees obviously are not affordable for many families, and this is bad for the economy because when parents are given short notice about losing their childcare, they might possibly have to quit their jobs in order to care for their child. So, and this is not a problem that's going away because next year they might have to cut hours again if we don't get the funding. Other nursery schools in Cambridgeshire are also struggling, and they haven't asked for money yet, but they will. So this needs urgent attention. So what I'd like to ask the County Council again is to go to central government and get more funding for Cambridgeshire for nursery schools and childcare. Get a dedicated representative to be working on this full-time, it's urgent. And also give an advance notice about changes in the funding structure to nursery schools because they're running very tight budgets. Thanks.
Thank you. The Leader of the Council will be writing to you after the Council meeting with the Council's response. Thank you for coming in. Members are advised that there will be no debate on the petition. Before I proceed with the agenda, can I please remind members about the audio and voting system? In order to register to speak, you need to press the silver button. You will then be automatically added to my list of speakers. If you have a point of order, which means that there has been an alleged breach of the council rules or procedure or law, I will need you to indicate the rule or law which you consider has been broken, or a personal explanation which only relates to some material part of an earlier speech made by the member, which may appear to have been misunderstood in the present debate. You need to raise your hand. Do not press your button, because otherwise the list gets confused. Basically, just raise your hand and the microphone will come to you. We now move on to item 8, item for determination from the Commercial and Investment Committee. Next is item 8, recommendations to the full council from the Commercial and Investment Committee. Can I remind members that they have received a summary from the landowners setting out their proposal, the cost of acquiring land on their sites and other supporting information that could be important in helping the council to make the final decision. Those submissions have been distributed to all members, but given their commercial nature are not included as part of the report to council and should not be referred to in the meeting. can I please ask the Chairman of the Commercial and Investment Committee, Councillor Schumann, to move that the recommendations as set out in the report be adopted, and the Vice Chairwoman, Councillor Hay, to second.
Happy to propose, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we now move to, there are no amendments for this item, I understand. Just checking. Sorry? I'm just making sure, yeah. Josh, Councillor Schumann, can I please ask you to move the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm happy to move the proposed agenda item 8 in the recommendations. Members have had the opportunity to engage with this process behind the recommendations today at the Commercial and Investments Committee on numerous occasions, at the working group, the Shire Hall working group meetings, which is represented across all parties of the Council and a representative of all members of the Council, and also members' seminar in which questions could be asked and information has been provided. I don't wish to elongate this introduction, as in my mind this is simply the next step in a process which we have already agreed at a previous meeting. I only wish to end by saying, Chairman, that I fully endorse the recommendation from CNI and thank the members of CNI who agreed to bring this important decision back to full Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have any speakers?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm actually not convinced that Alconbury is the best choice of location for the new headquarters for the County Council, mainly on the grounds of accessibility. Alconbury doesn't have the transport connections that Northstowe already has. Northstowe, as you know, is adjoined by Oakington. It's far more accessible for the residents of Cambridgeshire. It has regular buses to nearby towns. It also has a very, very well-used cycleway. There are plans to turn Oakington/Northstowe into a transport hub. They were well on their way. Alconbury, if it does go ahead, the main way of accessing Alconbury is going to be by motor car. That, yes, in the report there is an allusion there to the possibility of a rail station, but we know how long it takes for rail stations to be introduced. And talking of rail stations, we've got the new rail station in the north of Cambridge, a few minutes away from Oakington and Northstowe by the guided bus route, the very successful guided bus route, which we can praise again and again. It makes no sense to have Alconbury as being the location based on the fact that Alconbury is actually quite isolated, and I can't envisage it being part of a transport network. It seems to me a bit of a contradiction that we have the Greater Cambridge Partnership working on improving the infrastructure of Cambridge and surrounding area on the key theme of getting people out of their cars and onto buses and onto bicycles. There's huge investment in a network of cycleways, and more people are getting out of their cars. It just seems to be a contradiction that we're looking at a site where we're going to be basically adding to the carbon footprint of Cambridgeshire. And I really think it's a very important way of looking at why Alconbury is just not the right place. It's interesting, this morning when I turned up here, instead of being annoyed about not being able to park my bicycle easily, I was actually very pleased, because it's a clear sign of the number of staff in this building who actually come here under their own steam. They come here by bike. Many of them walk here. And I also see many of them queuing up for the buses outside. So what's going to happen to those staff if there is the move to Alconbury. They're going to be forced to access using private motor cars. The other thing I'd just like to allude to, changing the subject slightly on this, the do-nothing option, which Shire Hall here, this location, has been described as. It seems like do-nothing seems to have crept into the report, because I recall that, was it Mr. Anthony Carpin came here to this chamber to ask about the possibilities of this site being turned into a heritage site. But it seems to be overlooked in the report. And I was just wondering what has happened to that aspect of this site. So there you are, transport, and just a little addition there about the heritage site, which I do believe was promised to be looked into by ourselves here in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Fellow members, I'm speaking also to oppose this motion, which, like pavements of Cambridgeshire, seems to be full of holes. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Can everybody hear now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm opposing this motion predominantly on the approach that's outlined as the paper, which I believe is full of holes, and also about the assertions about the council's presence in Cambridge. The motion before you talks about the council retaining a physical presence in Cambridge. Now that's registrations of births, marriages and deaths, and I would hope that there would continue to be some meetings in the city as well. Reference has been made to the protection of the ancient monuments and ensuring that there's access to the site. Well, let's not do nothing, but it seems to me to do as little as possible as well, merely to retain access. And I also would ask for a better response to the question raised by my constituent and Councillor Kavanagh's Anthony Carpin, who raised the issue about how might we extend access to that and provide better access to the monument, better information about it, and perhaps integrating it better with other historic museum facilities in the city. The council access to the physical buildings, the report focuses very much on that. Now the council works on different levels. There are the buildings, the bricks and mortar, the facilities for people to work at and to have meetings at and for the public to visit. It's paramount that those facilities are accessible. We don't have assurances that there's good public transport links at present. Without wishing to repeat what Councillor Kavanagh said, the public transport facilities are not there at present, and it's reckless to make a decision based on something that might happen. We know only too well this council's record of even producing buildings to schedule and to budget, trying to tie that in with the unpredictability of new railway stations seems to me to be very precarious indeed. But as well as the bricks and mortar only actually enable the core purpose of the council, which is providing a conduit for democracy. It's where people come to speak to us today, such as the public speakers. I think they've gone, but they came to talk to us today. Well, would that be possible in an area without public transport links, particularly for people who aren't coming here regularly? It's actually quite difficult to work out a public transport route. I believe it's essential that the council is somewhere that is accessible. It would make better sense to have the new headquarters space, not necessarily in Cambridge, but something which people can already access where we've already got the transport links. So I would like to oppose the motion on the grounds that it's not ready and we have no assurances that it will be ready in time, that it does not stack up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Hang on. I'm next on the list. It's all right. It's confusing. Thank you. We will not be supporting the proposal of the move for the council's headquarters to the new building at Alconbury. While we do believe there is a good case in the medium term for the council to move much of its business off the Shire Hall site, we do not believe that now is the right time for this council to be spending money and, equally importantly, using up a great deal of officer time and effort in the building of a new headquarters. This council is cutting frontline services such as children's centres, it is failing to maintain our roads, and it is struggling to meet demand in social care, with big questions being asked by the Care Quality Commission about our record on delayed discharges or bed blocking. Under these circumstances, where the council is struggling to deliver on its core services, we believe this grand project to build a new headquarters is a luxury we simply cannot afford.
Hang on, we have a point of
order or information.
We don't have points of order, we have a point of information. Let's see what it's got.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Under the Council's 6 months rule, we cannot debate something that's already been debated. It was made clear in earlier references that the do-nothing option is not on the table. A refusal to build a new building is an actual reversion to the do-nothing option, which was discarded by full Council because of the £30+ million worth of savings coming in. Unless Councillor Netzinger changes the tenet of her speech, she's sticking on an option that has already been discarded by this Council.
I understand that it's the 6 month rule, and I'm not proposing that we do nothing. I'm not proposing we do nothing. I am absolutely not proposing that we build a new headquarters. It is not the same. I fully realise that the documents related to this project demonstrate that in the long term, moving out of Shire Hall will save money. However, in the short term, the project will have significant additional costs, and importantly, these costs are both financial, as the building of a new headquarters will cost millions. In my view, it is equally important that the project will take up a great deal of staff time and effort at a time when that effort should be focused relentlessly on improving our core services. The hub and spoke model proposed in the papers could be brought in without the building of a new headquarters at Alconbury. And at a time when the local government landscape in Cambridgeshire is unsustainably complex, with parish councils, district councils, the Greater Cambridge Partnership, the County Council and the Combined Authority all involved, surely we should be looking to slim down council buildings and share with districts rather than building more swanky new office space. The councils who have recently moved to new headquarters include South Cambridgeshire, Huntingdon and most worryingly of all Northamptonshire. In every case, there is now surplus office space beyond what is needed by that council. We should be focusing on using the estate we share with partner councils more effectively and not undertaking the risky distraction of building a new headquarters, and we will not support this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
As I said at Commercial and Investment Committee, I think if we choose Alconbury, we are making a deeply flawed decision. The consultants claim in their report, and I quote, "Noting that the hubs are not planned to be open until July 2020, it's important to adjust for known changes in infrastructure that are due to be completed by this date." They then proceed to ignore their own judgment. Let's take two examples from recent reports sent in by the two sites. First, in terms of place. The planned changes in infrastructure in Northstowe by 2020 include a food store adjacent to the county site and the creation of the main square as part of the 78,700 square metre town centre space. None of these are listed in your reports. But food outlets and the wonderful cricket pitch at Alconbury are. Resultant score, Alconbury 4, Northstowe 1. Second, accessibility. I'm not going to spend much time on that, other people have said it. The consultants score Alconbury higher, but the reverse is actually true, even for staff. Okay? I gather that it doesn't matter if residents can't get there, but even for staff. Alconbury, as the developers themselves highlight in their own submission, is based around Carr and the A14. Northstowe is easily accessible for staff by cycle and public transport, bus and rail. The existing Cambridge North Station is not listed, but the Alconbury gleam in the eye in the paper is. Now this brings me to a much bigger issue. The claims of Northstowe, the positive claims of Northstowe, as a healthy new town. Northstowe is being sponsored and carefully monitored by your own health committee. It is specifically designed to help meet a key council priority, which is helping people live healthy and independent lives. It can play a part in supporting and protecting vulnerable people. Northstowe is a town that will support health, not just by encouraging walking and cycling through its design and build, but by innovative development of integrated healthcare and preventive health services. It'll be a proper town with 25,000 plus population, twice the size of Alconbury, by its own admission. The types and range of housing and the final extent of facilities and amenities will be much more extensive than in Northstowe. It will have twice as many schools, twice as many homes. I feel that this decision is not being made to serve the wider interests of Cambridgeshire. I feel it's being made for other reasons. If we vote against Northstowe, I think we will regret the chance we missed today to demonstrate our faith in our own healthy new town and in innovative ways of living. And I think it will be a sad day indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks very much. There are obviously differences in the chamber over this issue, but I think and hope that one of the things that most of us, all but one in fact in this chamber, will agree about is that this council's reach does not extend to Scotland. And I want to say that people who live in Scotland ought not to cheat the people of Cambridgeshire by remaining in office as councillors. Councillor Donald Adey should be ashamed of himself. He is not wanted here, and he should resign immediately.
I think actually we are moving.
For the rest, I want to echo what others have said about the relative inaccessibility of Auchenbury compared to Northstowe, and I do congratulate Councillor Jones on the excellent work that she's done to analyse the position. But actually, personally, my main reason for voting against this proposal is that we all know that in reality the County Council is on its last legs. It isn't going to exist for many more years. We know that this is coming. And its demise should open the way for a great improvement, in fact, in the local governance of this county, which is so crowded at the moment with conflicting and excessive layers of governance all struggling along together. And that will be to the great benefit of the people of all of this county. Like as not, this is going to take the form of 2 unitary councils, but we don't know this. At least if anybody in this chamber thinks they do know this, I don't know this. But what I do see is that this cannot possibly be the right time to commit large sums of money and enormous amounts of effort to rejigging the council's physical estate. This is not the right time. It would be irresponsible to proceed, and I shall oppose it.
Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Thank you. I'd like the points that I was going to make on heritage sites and accessibility of Auchenbury. I won't restate as division councillor. I'd like to support the points that my colleagues have made. Councillor Jones made the good point that even for our staff, Auchenbury is only accessible by car on the A14. I'd like to read something from the bottom of page 17. However, in the short term, the council will undoubtedly lose some staff through this process. I'd like to point out that I am very shocked and disappointed at the cavalier way in which our staff are being treated here, our staff who work for us, and that we're showing such little concern that we will be losing them. We know we have problems in workforce, and I think that we should take this, consider this more seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you very much. Much has been said, and rightly said, and well said about public transport and public access to the headquarters of the County Council. To me, personally, I'm not Cambridge-centric. I looked up on a map and I found that where I live is pretty much equidistant between Shire Hall and Alconbury, so it doesn't matter to me. And it doesn't matter to me because I have a car and I can drive. However, I learned to drive at the ripe old age of 5 days short of my 53rd birthday, which was 6 years and 4 months ago. 5 months ago. And so I know very well indeed what it feels like to live in parts of Cambridgeshire that are badly connected by public transport. Now, most of those, thanks to the guided bus and the railway service, can make a reasonable journey into Cambridge to attend meetings of this body and have their say, ask their questions, present their petitions, lobby, wave banners around, whatever they want to do. And it's a shame in a way that we don't have more of that. But we will have less of that if so many more people are going to be alienated from the public democracy of Cambridgeshire County Council because they cannot access a venue that is as poorly connected as Alconbury. Now, if we rule out Cambridge and rule out Alconbury, it is very difficult, and I think this whole debate shows how poorly connected we are by public transport, full stop. It demonstrates absolutely the paucity of public transport in Cambridgeshire, and that is an important take-home lesson, I think, for all of us for the future. The second thing I wanted to say, was being vaguely mentioned as well, is the uncertain future of local government structures. It is some time since my colleague, Councillor Downs, moved a motion in this chamber that we should be looking at the future of the governance of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And that was agreed. The mayor then decided he wanted to be involved in it and wanted indeed to lead on it. And we've heard no more. I have now asked on 2 occasions in another forum what is happening with the mayor's review of local governance. And I have yet to receive any form of answer, convincing or otherwise. We are uncertain. We do not know what is going to happen to us or to any of the other district councils. And for that reason, I think it is dangerous to predicate our arrangements in the medium term on our continued existence and on the continued existence of others. And the points have been well made about the Northamptonshire having to sell its new HQ, but also to the surplus of office space in our lower tier councils around Cambridgeshire. And it was interesting to see in the papers that we received as members the number of local authorities saying, oh, we've got spare space, we can give you that. Will we be in the same position in 3, 4, 5 years' time, begging people to take rooms off our hands and buildings off of our hands? On that point, I do think that if this motion is passed today, and I think it will be very regrettable if it is, but if it is, I would ask that serious consideration be given to rotating meetings of this authority around the county so that it gives at least an occasional chance for people who are denied that chance by public transport deficits, that it gives them an occasional chance at least to participate in the running of the county council and come along and have their say as members of the public. So I would make that request that that be seriously considered. Finally, we are only discussing this matter in this chamber today because Commercial and Investment Committee, in its generosity, decided to allow us to do so. This council delegated the decision to Commercial and Investment Committee. I think it is, again, I'll use the word regrettable, that that is the position that we are in, that we are able to have this debate only because of the grace and favour of the Commercial and Investment Committee, a committee that has been noted. Indeed, it is its remit to take decisions based on financial considerations alone, irrespective of the council and the committees that provide those services and the functions that provide those services about which it's making decisions. Bearing in mind, therefore, that it remains within the delegation of C&I to consider whether or not Shire Hall is leased or sold, I believe very firmly that that is a decision that C&I committee should not choose to make on its own, but that decision should come back here too. We've seen models about leasing predominantly. We've not seen a financial model around sale and disposal, and I think that it would be entirely wrong for C&I to make that decision on its own, and I would ask for an assurance that C&I will once again decide that it is not going to use its delegated powers to make that decision without bringing it back.
Thank you. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to make 2 points. The first is that I think Councillor Jones has highlighted absolutely perfectly why we should not be making a decision. The reason we should not be making a decision is because the information that has been used to assess the business case is fundamentally and profoundly flawed. If this council progresses to make a decision today, it is doing so in the knowledge that the information on which it is basing its decision is wrong. And that strikes me as, at the very least, foolhardy. The second reason I will not be supporting this today is because I would invite the Conservative group to consider what they think the voter is going to do in 3 years' time. When the voter is faced with a description of a shiny new HQ built to specification, somewhere where the vast majority of Cambridgeshire residents cannot reach using public transport, and tying up, as has already been remarked, considerable amounts of manpower and womanpower and money. And money that could be used only too clearly on services that every Cambridgeshire resident sees deteriorating day by day. So, for no other reason than self-preservation, I would strongly urge Conservative members of this authority to consider very carefully how they vote on this item. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. Alconbury, North Stowe, Cambridge. If I try and cycle to any of those from Wisbech, it will kill me. And that's just true. But maybe I can improve that over time. Chairman, I feel obliged to remind some people in this council chamber that there are parts of Cambridgeshire that are not Cambridge. Quite a lot of them, actually. And those of us who live quite a long way away from this city would like to remind people that we are not grumpy, and we don't want to begrudge the fact that Cambridgeshire appears to have everything, but that we do actually exist. And so I will be supporting pretty much anything that doesn't focus everything on Cambridge. I really will. And I'd really just like to remind any members who are queuing up to say, because Cambridge has everything, because it's a really wealthy place with all these transport links, it should retain everything. To any of the people making that argument, I would say, check your privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think what I have to say follows very neatly on from what Councillor Tierney has very effectively said. But I want to start, I suppose, by drawing attention. Is it appropriate to draw attention to a declaration in my, my Register of Interests, which is I'm a member of the University of Cambridge, and I love this city. I think it's fantastic. I've had very, very happy times here, and I hope I'll continue to do so. But the voices we have heard from Cambridge today frame this debate in a very peculiar way. And I just want to say to opposition members, it's not about us. It's not about us. I conducted a straw poll of very politically engaged people who live in Cambridge. There were a few weeks ago, there were quite a lot of people running around the streets of Cambridge engaged in political activity. And, you know, one of them said to me, very bright young person, very politically engaged, he was very interested in this story about how the county council are planning to move out of the Guildhall. You know, the doings of this organisation, as an organisation, are not that important to the people I was with in Isleham Parish Council last night, to be honest. And I think it is very interesting. We've talked about delegation. Now, Councillor Dupre is right to draw attention to the fact that the C&I committee has brought this back to full council, when in fact there's a delegation that allows C&I committee to decide it. And, you know, I think that's laudable in C&I committee that we have that respect for the rest of the council, that we're doing that. But all the other decisions that are vital to the lives of Cambridgeshire residents, that are taken every day under delegation in this council, and opposition members don't jump up and down saying that all has to be brought back into full council. This all comes back to the point that was made by the Archdeacon at the beginning today in one of his prayers. We have a duty of stewardship to the resources we manage on behalf of the people of Cambridge, and we do that through our processes responsibly, moving out and moving to the best value location is going to save the taxpayers of Cambridge an enormous amount of Cambridgeshire, an enormous amount of money. We've used various figures. I think the last time we were here we used a figure about £55 million. I've heard a figure of £45 million recently. It's going to save an enormous amount of money by moving from a very expensive, shiny, prestigious location to something low-key. We will share offices. 3/4 of the staff from this building will share offices with partner organisations under this plan, and we will move the core headquarters to a low-key, smaller building in a cheaper location, and we've had a process. And I think it's a little bit disappointing that so many opposition members who have been involved in that process, who could have gone to one of the 3 member seminars that were held at which this was discussed, members who were at one of the 11, according to my diary, meetings of the Shire Hall Working Group at which the criteria and the process were discussed, are now at this stage talking as if, and of course they're only talking as if, all the stuff that's in these papers is complete news to them. Under the scheme of delegation, a process has been followed to identify the best value future location. I think we really should trust that robust process. And it is not about us, but I'm going to bring it back to a personal note. I sit in this chamber as a Conservative. I stand in this chamber as a Conservative. You don't conserve things by just leaving them alone and letting them run on in the old way and decay. We're conserving good value for money, local government for the citizens of Cambridgeshire by following the process, the result of which the C&I Committee has brought to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had cause when reading these papers to read the report upon which the Commercial and Investments made their decision. And I may be wrong in this, but I'm bemused to see on page 19 of that report that the committee made its decision on the basis that there are no significant public health impacts directly arising from this report. Well, I would have thought that in terms of public health impacts, they wouldn't be addressing themselves to the report, but to the actual proposal that was before them. But even worse, I see on page 20 that in relation to has the impact on statutory, legal and risk implications been cleared by LGSS law, the answer is no. In relation to have any engagement and community implications being cleared by communications, the answer is no. In relation to have any public health implications being cleared by public health, the answer is no. So am I to believe that the Commercial and Investments Committee made its decision despite the lack of key and crucial information before it? I now turn to the report that's before this council today as the report. I echo the concerns that have been raised by my colleagues about the lack of anything in this report responding to Mr. Carpen's questions about the historical nature of this site. And I note back at C on paragraph 1.2 that still there's nothing in this report that actually indicates to this council as to how the ancient monument status will be protected, for example. And the lack of that is actually crucial. I note also that's what's been said about the opportunities for members to actually attend meetings where this was discussed, this proposal, before it came before full council. But notably, in my understanding, the meetings were held on a particular day, namely Friday of the week. Some of us actually engage in paid employment, which means that we have to be available every day of the week, and that we organise our time so that we can attend committee meetings of this council in accordance with a program that we fit in, which means that Fridays are an impossibility. And that applies to everybody who's in paid employment. They have to make commitments to their employers, and so it makes it difficult to attend on any day of the week. I refer to paragraph 4.4, the equality and diversity implications. Now, all that is said in this paragraph about accessibility, the whole implication is that accessibility is simply how to get into a building. Accessibility is so much more than that. And this has been raised by a number of my colleagues, the transport issue. Transport is an accessibility issue. And in terms of ecology and diversity implications, it's actually key. And yet it's been completely overlooked, as if, as I say, the only issue of accessibility is how one enters and exits from a building, or once in it, traverses the building if it's several stories. I go also to the issue of localism. It says here that under paragraph 4.6 on page 9, there are no significant localism impacts. And all that's mentioned there is Cambridge residents. This report simply talks about localism vis-a-vis Cambridge residents. Well, I say to you, as it's been noted, there are many residents in Cambridgeshire who are not in Cambridge, yet that hasn't been addressed in localism. I end on this point. On paragraph 1.1, the report talks about placing communities we serve at the heart of service delivery. This council has so far removed itself from service delivery that I fear that what is really meant there is this buzzword transformation. And what this is about too is about actually transferring the requirement to provide services from this council onto the communities that we are supposed to be serving. We, Labor, oppose this proposition and this motion, absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Shooter.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I wasn't planning to speak on this motion. I don't have particularly strong views on where the location should be for where we go in the future, but I've just got a few points to make. I think we're all agreed that this building's not fit for purpose. I mean, look at the state of it. I mean, look at the damp coming through the corner up there, the paint peeling off the walls. This building needs an awful lot of money spent on it, and we certainly should not be here spending that money on this building. In fact, I very much look forward to coming to stay in this building when it's a fine 5-star hotel or whatever it becomes, because I think an organisation needs to pump an awful lot of money to make this building fit for a purpose, but not the purpose of local government. As Councillor Harrison said, local government is surely going to change. None of us know the form that it's going to take, but it is going to change, and I sincerely hope that a whole tier of local government is taken out. I don't know which tier that will be. I suppose there is a saying that turkeys don't vote for Christmas, so we're unlikely to vote to do ourselves out of a job. Personally, I believe that somebody has got to go because we can't have all these tiers of government. But we don't yet know what's going to happen. I don't think the location is as important as the building itself. It's absolutely vital that the building that we move to should not be a palace, should not be a cathedral of local government, should not be any of those things. It needs to be a highly adaptable building that can easily have another purpose if, for whatever reason, we're no longer there in 10 years' time. I was very privileged last week to open a new library at Clay Farm in Trumpington. And I saw then what can be done with modern buildings. This is an absolutely remarkable facility. It has the most wonderful seating arrangements for the stage and everything that it's got in there, so that the whole thing rolls back into the wall and provides all that open space. I think the most important thing, the most important decision for the future is for the committee that's charged to do this to make absolutely sure that this building can be used for a whole range of purposes. I mean, how many times do we use this chamber? You all know it's absolutely ridiculous. This chamber is hardly ever used. We need a space wherever we go to that is going to be adaptable for the future, that can be used for a range of civic and functions for people, maybe even used as a theatre at times. The number of people that are actually going to be accommodated there from a work point of view is going to be circa 350, something of that sort. So if the building has many other uses, that needs to be negotiated wherever it is with the local population, with the local growth that's going on in that area. So I think that's the really important decision, is how we design the building that we go to, how we finance it, how it's looked at for the future, whether it's freehold, leasehold. These are the really key decisions. The actual location, I honestly don't think matters very much. And I think with the hub and spokes principle that we're moving towards, with all the changes that are going to be in local government, whether we're part of it or not, those are the decisions we need to look at. So it can be anywhere, quite honestly, as long as those things happen. If it goes to Auconbury, and if we decide that it should go to Auconbury, I hope that we'll extend the guided bus to Auconbury. I think a wonderful guided bus is fantastic. There was a plan, I believe, at one time to do that, and I think it would be wonderful if the guided bus was extended to Auconbury, and maybe this is the spur that's needed to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead. I don't think so.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a very small point in reply to the comment made by the Chair of the Working Party, with its implied accusation that we are opposing the move to Alconbury because we're Cambridge-centric. I think the speeches that have been made by the Labour group and by the Liberal Democrat group demonstrate very clearly that our concern is for the staff, the people who work for us. I have been to all the seminars, and I have seen the statistics produced there, which show that the majority of our workforce live in and around Cambridge. Our concern is about how are they going to get to Alconbury by public transport. Answer, they can't. They will have to use a car. And I think to accuse us of being Cambridge-centric and concerned about members is incorrect. We are concerned about how our staff and people who work for us are going to get to a place that has no public transport links, has been said by many people. And I really feel that is our concern. And I think it's unjust to say that we are simply Cambridge-centric. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. Yes, I actually...
Councillor Williams. Yeah.
Sorry, I've done it again. I do apologise. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we've heard this morning certainly throws considerable doubt on the report that went to the committee and whether that report actually was accurate and unbiased in its assessment of Alconbury against Northstowe. It certainly raises some very serious doubts in my mind as to how some of that scoring came about, particularly with regard to public transport and other facilities at Alconbury versus Northstowe. I do feel that's strong enough to us to have doubts as to whether or not we can make a decision today based on that report because of the flaws in that report. And I think it's also been said today that what we don't want to find ourselves in 3 or 4 years away is a building that we spent considerable sum of money on that actually is going to be wasted because this authority may not exist. And so I think it's worth us pausing and actually reflecting on what sort of structure of local government we want in this county, given the fact that everyone I've heard so far in this chamber this morning has said we can't go on with what we've got at the moment because there's far too much structure. People are far too removed from the decision-making through the layers of bureaucracy that we now have in this county. So to make a decision which is going to cost this authority millions, and particularly the council taxpayers of this authority millions, is foolhardy. And we should, I think, pause and think, what is the structure of local government going to look like in 5, 10 years' time before we actually go ahead and make this decision? It also concerns me that one aspect of this which no one is sort of very interested in bringing to light, and that is that Alconbury is, of course, an enterprise zone. And in enterprise zones, you don't pay business rates. And I wonder how many of our small and medium-sized enterprises in this county will look upon this authority building its new HQ in an enterprise zone where it doesn't pay business rates, whereas for many people, they will not have that privilege.
Sorry, Councillor Bates. You have a point of order.
My point of order actually is I don't think you'll find that this will fall in the current position in respect of the tax incentives which were given at enterprise zone. So your statement is actually incorrect.
Thank you, Councillor Williams, if you want to carry on.
Thank you for that clarification. But I will be interested to see whether or not we do at the end of the day pay business rates on that building in Alconbury. But I go back to my main point. I think what we are trying to do today is premature. It is based on evidence which I believe is in some parts untrustworthy, has been looked at with a biased mind, and doesn't bear relation to what we could be seeing in this county in 5 or 10 years' time, because undoubtedly there will be one or even maybe 2 layers of local government removed in this county in 10 years' time. It will look completely different, and we are going to saddle the council taxpayers with a white elephant if we decide to go ahead with our decision today.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam. You are next on the list.
Thank you. Thank you. I noticed as I came into this building this morning that there were 8 people in the reception waiting to speak to officers about all sorts of things. We know not how they travelled here, but they did travel here. They may have come from Cambridge, but they may have come from outside, because, like it or not, when you look at the map of Cambridgeshire, Cambridge City acts as a hub. The transport links come to Cambridge because it has historically been the Shire town. One of the things that, and I did, as I may say, attend all of the seminars that I could on this matter, and as you know, I asked questions at those seminars. Now, one of the things I would like to ask questions on is, again, I think Councillor Jones has highlighted some very severe concerns about the data that was used to draw up the scoring. And I think I totally agree with Councillor Williams that we ought to be looking at that data again. The other point is that one of the things that we did, that was voted down by this council, was the do nothing option. But that did not, in my mind, preclude do something else, which was, in my view, we shouldn't be building and spending new. We should be looking at where we can use existing facilities, perhaps in the environs of this hub, not necessarily here, but somewhere where buildings are already being built as office premises. For example, Cambridge North Station has a whole load of them going on at the moment. I'm not suggesting we necessarily stay here, but I do not think that we can dispute the fact that currently public transport links in this county do come to Cambridge. I absolutely agree some of the facilities should be provided elsewhere around the county, but you cannot deny that the current transport links and also those for bus, guided busway, do come here. And I think we should bear that in mind. The other thing I wanted to point out, and absolutely agree with others, I think it's premature to be making this decision at a time when in a couple of years' time this particular authority may not exist. And I think that would be a huge waste of money, and I think it would be a wrong message to give our hard-pressed residents, and I just think that's the wrong thing to do. So I cannot possibly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chairman. I had a very open mind on this when the debate started. Very open. Geographically, Alconbury is probably not the place for expansion of a county-wide organisation. And we've heard arguments why it shouldn't be. Staff. What are the staff going to do? For goodness sake. However, bear in mind that some of the staff who work here actually live in St Neots. I had to get St Neots in, the largest town in Cambridgeshire. Exactly. For those that didn't know it already. So, yes. How many did we say? 350 staff. What we've got to remember is that Cambridge does not stop at Madingley. It does spread west, and I'd urge everybody then to head west. Northstowe, yeah, it's possible, but the advantages of Alconbury is that it is an enterprise zone. I sit on another committee which is trying to attract businesses and employment to our area, and this fits very nicely into that category. We have an outturn of people in our area who go down to London each day, and they work down there and use our area as a community, dormitory area, a place to sleep. That's all. I would welcome more local employment. And let's face it, we are, county council staff are an employer. So, yeah, I'm tempted to go on the Alconbury bit. Don't worry, you know, it's not the end of the world over there. And I do appreciate that people perhaps in Newmarket might find it a bit difficult with the sat-navs, etc. But it is workable, yeah. But I do like the idea of a custom-made building. This is far too big, and it's got such potential as a hotel or commercial enterprise. But I do like the idea of a custom-built council chamber even, which could also go as a theatre. Let's face it, most of the time we've got our own radio-made pantomime here, haven't we? Yeah. But yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, yeah. Oh, come on, do try and keep up. Do try and keep up. I'm just getting in the swing of things. I've only got 3 minutes. Yeah, so yeah, Alconbury seriously is a good possibility, and I will be voting for that. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Van der Ven.
I think we have to take the comments that have been made about public transport extremely seriously. We haven't talked about the ongoing issue that we should always be thinking about, which is trying to recruit new, younger people into local democracy. And if the requirement is that you have to have a car to get there, that's really not on. So that I would just hold as incredibly important, and I'd like to thank Councillor Jones for her work on the transport assessment. But I wanted to talk about buildings. I represent 2 villages with children's centres, Bassingbourne and Melbourne. Both of those buildings were opened not very long ago. We're now trying to get rid of both of them. And I tend to always have Bassingbourne Parish Council directly after a full council meeting here. I have to go to Bassingbourne tonight and explain that there's still no interest from anyone in taking on a building which this council really wants to get rid of by the end of July. So I have to go and explain that that building is going to be a little white elephant in Bassingbourne, where we have only 1 subsidised bus left, no public transport, and bring them up to date on what this council is thinking about doing in terms of its future premises, building a new building. So that's going to be a difficult report to make.
Thank you. I have Councillor Peter Downs, who's next. I have Councillor Peter Downs.
I was involved in a discussion like this last week in another organisation. As it happens, I'm a trustee of an association which is facing a changing future. They are in a building which is not fit for purpose. It's an old building, not fit for purpose. They need to move out, but they don't want to commit themselves in a time of flux to expensive capital investment. So they have been investigating different models, including renting existing office property in accessible places. Now, it strikes me that we have not yet got a convincing case for what is being proposed. There are so many unknowns. Every week, the combined authority takes on more responsibility. We do not yet know what the future will be. And it seems to me to be inappropriate to go into building a new physical location at a time of flux and uncertainty in the local government world. And so I would suggest that the time is not right to vote. We should put this issue back to the committee to consider the points that have been made, very well made, in this chamber today, and I don't need to repeat those. So I think it is premature to make this decision, and I would like to see it referred back.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson.
Chair, thank you. I've listened intently to all the arguments, so I think, as the local member for Northstowe, I should now say what I think, and not necessarily what I think, because I've got two stories. The first story was, we've all seen these papers, we've all discussed this over months, and we've all been in our group rooms discussing what do we think, how we're going to vote, and we have our own internal debates within our own groups. And this group is no exception. We had a long couple of weeks ago, I think it might have been, I gave what I've been told is a spirited defence of why this authority should move to the new healthy town of Northstowe. And one of my more senior members even patted me on the back. He goes, well done, you almost convinced me. It is, because I pointed out, and I'll tell you what I pointed out at the time, when we got all these reams and reams of trees as information, and, you know, accessibility. You just turn to the accessibility page, and we discussed this with the people who did the accessibility. You know, and it is, to my mind, then, and it is now, a bit of a work of fiction. In as much as I got in my car this morning to come here. I live in Long Stanton, which Northstowe is going to be built on top of Oakington, much further away. From my house to the new town centre of this new healthy town of Northstowe is about a 10-minute stroll. That's all. So therefore, I could class myself perhaps, or some people may class me, as an existing resident of the future town of Northstowe. So I was quite keen. I thought, well, that'd be great. It would give the town more gravitas, more importance to go forward as a new exemplar development, as the local district council is, quite rightly so, shouting about. And perhaps I should shout a bit more. However, then they said, well, it takes you 40, 50, 60, an hour to drive into Cambridge. But it doesn't. I left my home this morning at 2 minutes to 8. I walked in this building, 8:15. 8 o'clock in the morning, onto the A14, very busy, roadworks, 40 miles an hour. I did the same the other day, slightly later time, but however, I wouldn't want to leave any later. But if you want to get to work for 9, example, then I would leave home at 8, and I would get here for 8:15, as I did this morning. And I'm not just saying that. People saw me here this morning. There were no members here this morning, I noted. It was just me at 8:15. I looked for Mayor Bear here, but he was stuck in traffic, he tells me. Coming in. Yeah, you should live on the A14, my friend. And then there's the buses. The buses, this really, really, you know, apparently Alconbury, I was told, is more accessible because they have up to 5 buses an hour. and it could take anywhere to an hour and a half to get there from Cambridge. And then it says, and Northstowe, of course, has up to 15 buses an hour. But Alconbury is still more accessible. So I questioned that. And I also questioned, at the time it took. I've been on the guided bus from the Longstanton Park and Ride, pay too much money, as we all do if we live there, because it's a park and ride. Go down the 20 seconds down the line to Oakington, you pay a fraction of the price. But that's for another debate, and possibly another building. And there's no way it takes up to 50 minutes on the guided bus to get to the centre of Cambridge from Longstanton Park and Ride. I've done it many times. I've done it in early morning, I've done it in the afternoon, I've done it in the evening to meet friends for social activities. And I can honestly say I've never been on that guided bus, whether I go to Christ's Peace that way or down to the round church here, which is near the Mitre. 20 minutes. I've never been on a bus longer than 20 minutes. So that caught my eye when I was defending and arguing why this authority should relocate its headquarters to Northstowe. And then, was this my road to Emmaus? I don't know. Was I the doubting Thomas, as I discussed with the Padre, as I would call him earlier? I don't know. I went home, sat on your sofa, have a drink, thinking about it. Then I popped in my car, I drove to the end of my village to see the retiring district councillor, Alex Riley, who'd been district councillor for Longstanton for absolute years, done a terrific job. I just wanted to go and say thank you, enjoy your retirement, have a chat. Can you have 5 minutes, please? Local member, it's important. Local member, I'm going to tell you what the local people think. Come on. Go on. Oh, yeah. Thank you,
I did let her go over a bit, just a bit.
Anyway, I said to Alex Riley, and I mentioned this, he said, what do we want that for? He said, you think about it. And the question was no more. So I did think about it. And then I walked to the high street of the co-op. And then I went into the pub and thought about it. And I spoke about it. And I asked the people who some people might say are existing residents. I asked them. And then I went to the sports club, because there was football training going on with the kids, and all the parents are there, and I asked them. And they said, and they said, excuse me, Chair, please, and they said, why do we want that? Can we please have a cinema? Can we have a bowling alley?
A theatre?
Hang on,
Can we have a theatre? A pub?
Hang on.
We don't want a boring...
Hang on a minute. Order.
Thank you, Chairman. We did not do the questioner this morning the courtesy of allowing his question to be answered fully by the leader of the council. I feel that I have been with Councillor Hudson on this trail around his division, and it's time for that trail around his division to come to an end.
Oh, you're right. I did let Councillor Count go on for a bit longer. You've got 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So, the question is, there were some people, you can moan as much, but why don't you want to listen to the people who live there? The people who we are for. It's not about us, as we've been told, it's about
Councillor
them.
Hudson.
So they said, we don't want it, we want a place that's nice to live. We want our town centre to be fun. We don't want a boring old hot air. There were some who did agree.
Councillor Hudson, I think I've got... Sorry, you've made your point.
I would not be voting for Alconbury, though. Thank you.
Made your point. Right, I did allow you to go on a little bit because you're the local member, but you've
Thank
made
you,
your
Madam
point.
Chair. I appreciate it very much.
Councillor Count.
Follow that. Yeah, I feel that's a question too hard to follow that. I wish it was behind me, as somebody said. But, look, change isn't popular. I know that. Change isn't popular. And when I put this motion to council quite a long while ago, it wasn't, let's come out of Cambridge. The motion said, let's look at a business case and see if it makes sense. And the reason I put that motion to council was we'd already experimented with the Lloyds, with the out the back, which now delivers £1 million a year into our coffers to deliver services in a building that we used to fully occupy. And back then, the same questions come in. We'll never manage, we'll never squeeze in. The information isn't sufficient. Please don't make a decision. That's all we're getting today. Please don't make a decision. The option to do nothing has been ruled out. So instead of saying, let's rule out do nothing, we're going to go for, the information is flawed, let's not make a decision. Well, we do like to make decisions. We like to make decisions about the future because we know that the finances are difficult. So we did the business case. The business case is very clear. Whether you pick Auchenbury or Northstowe, £45 million worth of savings plus will be delivered for our services for the people of Cambridgeshire to deliver those services. So we need to move. And what gets me is knowing that change is difficult, and somebody pointed me once in the direction of the book, Who Ate My Cheese? And I found that very useful. Those of you that haven't read it, please do. If you want to affect change, you have to bring people along for the journey. You will get the people who say, I don't want change, the people who seek out change, and the people that can be converted along that journey. Now, we've heard all about the members' seminars. We've heard all about the cross-party group that worked through this, etc., etc. We employed independent assessments to be brought in so there was some credibility to the report, but even that's not good enough for some people because they don't want to eat the new cheese, to be quite honest. But I feel like a class teacher that's just discovered half the class has been asleep for the last 2 years because all of this journey has been well handled. It's been a good process. It's been a solid process. There's been buy-in by all political parties to get to us a point today where there should be buy-in. But because people don't like the answer, they're questioning the process. Because people don't like the answer, they're trying to pick holes. But that's unfortunate because I always knew there would be personal opinions. We all did. And that's why we had such a good and robust process to get us to this point here today. But I'm going to pick up on a few of these points that we have covered at the members' seminars, that we have covered during the meetings. The demise of the county council. Yeah, may happen. I know that if those people that are arguing against change today, we move towards a unitary, run out of Huntingdonshire from Auchenbury, those same people will be talking about against it today, as they would in the future. But it may finish. But this building isn't about delivering a county council. It's about delivering a workspace for people to deliver services from. That's going to be needed, whether a county council exists or not. People will be needed to work and do their jobs. And the second bit that has been covered repeatedly in the members' seminars and all the briefings that's not been covered today is this is not just about coming out of Shire Hall and building that great big shiny new building over at Auchenbury. This is a hub and spoke model. This is about us delivering our services closer to where people live. The entirety of Shire Hall, including the back bit, has been shrinking over the years, and we have been occupying our spaces nearer to the community, and that will continue. And where the districts do have some empty spaces, which has been discussed, discussions are on how we can occupy them rather than building a massive new building. It will be a smaller building with less people, and it will be located in a cheaper area. Now, talking about cheaper areas, the whole point about this saving is the savings to the county council, and that's the entirety is captured in that business case. But what we haven't done is look at the impact on other people, our partner organisations. If some of our spokes can occupy some of those district council premises and fill their spaces, what impact will that have on their bills? So we will deliver savings for other people. What about the fact that this could become a hotel or offices or student accommodation, adding to the vibrant economy of Cambridge that we do nothing for except for add congestion to at the moment?
Time,
so
Councillor Count.
Already, Madam Chairman.
Already.
I barely started.
And another thing.
One very minor point. Very, very minor.
Quickly.
Very, very minor. I would just like to say about disabled access. This building is an old building, a very old building, and it's not been always possible to give the disabled access that we do want to deliver for the future. When we build our new building, that will be very much at the heart of it. Thank you for your
Thank you. Councillor Bowden.
Madam Chairman, I am very disappointed about a great number of things in life, I can promise you. But I'm disappointed in reading this particular motion, and I'm further disappointed with Councillor Count's speech, because I didn't ever find out who did eat the cheese, and I would very much like to know that. But on this particular motion, that's because I'm on a diet at the moment, I'm hungry all the time. In this motion, I am disappointed by what we've got in front of us. There are parts of it which I very, very much support. I very much support the hub and spokes idea. I very much support the idea of shrinking our centre and devolving, having a locality-based model of service delivery. I very much support that. And I supported the idea of having a long list of sites and then using agreed criteria to narrow it down to a choice, and we've now got a choice of 2. On the hub and spokes idea, personally, I would have liked to have seen the hub shrunk even further, even possibly as far as having a virtual hub. But such is life, we've got what we've got in front of us. On the long list of 30 sites, I would have liked there to be some element of thinking about the economic impact of the area which was chosen for the headquarters, and in light of the fact that this council has said on a number of occasions that it wants to reduce the economic inequalities in our county and address the high levels of deprivation in the north of the county, to move that very much shrunken hub to the very north of the county to help us there. But that's not what we've got in front of us here, so I am disappointed in that. I have to make a choice, as we all do here, between 2 options. It's not do nothing or do something. We've made that choice. The choice is between the 2 sites we've got in front of us, Northstowe and Alconbury. And I personally haven't got very strong emotional feelings either way. So I feel I'm able to be fairly objective in looking at the evidence which has been provided to us. And on the evidence provided to us, especially taking into account the potential for co-location with the combined authority and being able to coordinate better with them, I feel that the evidence shows that Alconbury is the choice to make. And I do accept what Councillor Count said. We got independent assessors to come in to give us information. I respect the impassioned speech from Councillor Hudson and the comments that he made, but looking at it more objectively, I come to the conclusion, without a particular dog in this fight, that Alconbury is the choice which should be made. And just as a final throwaway comment, those members who were elected as Liberal Democrats, may I point out that if any more of you decide that you wish to move to Scotland, it's much easier if you're on the A1M.
Thank you, Councillor Bowden. I have one more speaker. I've had no speakers registered for the last 10 minutes. So I will call Peter Topping, Councillor Topping. I will then call Councillor Hay as the seconder, and then Councillor Schumann to sum up. We will then go to the electronic vote. Councillor Topping.
So, like Councillor Kavanagh, I cycled in this morning, the wind in my hair. Well, I had a cycle helmet on, so there you go. And I've always enjoyed cycling into Cambridge, and I've always felt a level of guilt when I think about those people coming into this council from points east and north, and how difficult those journeys are. For me, you know, working here, coming here is an absolute breeze. I just want to make one point. Local government landscape is febrile. I perhaps, as much as, perhaps more than most people, know that. But much of the commentary this morning has been along the lines that we cannot make decisions because we do not know the future. Members, this council cannot be afraid of its own shadows. We deliver vital services. Our officers deliver vital services for the people of Cambridgeshire. We need to be fit for purpose for the future. We need a headquarters that is fit for purpose for the future. This building, wonderful, historic though it is not fit for purpose. We must move on. Otherwise, quite frankly, we have no business doing anything. We cannot be afraid of the future, or sure as eggs are eggs, it will shape us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The decision to go forward in the move from Shire Hall has been a long time coming. But we have to remember that one of the reasons for us moving out of Shire Hall is to take services closer to the communities we serve. The byproduct of which will be a saving in excess of 45 million for this council. The County Council will continue to have a presence in the city through the registration service and social workers who are based in the community. As yet, no firm decisions have been taken on the future of Shire Hall site, as this will be marketed to bring the best possible return back to the County Council's taxpayers. But the key historic parts of this site will be protected. And I think that's important for us to make sure that the residents are aware of that. C&I realise that this is a momentous decision, and that is why we felt it was only right to bring the decision to relocate to Alconbury to full council for ratification. And I hope all members, or I would have hoped earlier, all members would, irrespective of their political affiliations, recognise that moving services nearer to the communities that serve, whilst at the same time making savings, which can be ploughed back into supporting services, has to be a win-win situation for this council. And so therefore I would ask all members to support the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Shipp.
I will try and be as quick as possible answering some of the points that have been raised, but as there's been so many speakers, I will try and get through as many as I can. But simply to say there's been an awful lot of duplication, so if I don't reference you to the comment, it's probably because it's been said before. If you can cast your memories back, members, to Councillor Kavanagh, right at the start, mentioned about accessibility. Well, Councillor Kavanagh, your points were much more about the accessibility of residents to this building. We mustn't forget this is a hub and spoke model. This is about taking governance to the communities we represent. This is not about having a building where people have to come to. And we must, the basis of the accessibility statement in which Councillor Kavanagh criticised was about the staff that may facilitate that building, not the public accessing. And Councillor Kavanagh also mentioned, along with other members, the future of this site. And I just wish to reassure members that the future of this site will be considered as part of the process going forward and will be considered by the Shire Hall Working Group that has been established. Councillor Taylor mentioned lots of reasons why we shouldn't leave Cambridge and then simply ended by saying we weren't ready. I can't agree with that, Councillor Taylor. I think if we have that attitude, we'll never make any decisions and tough decisions that we have to make. Councillor Netzinger identified the financial challenges that this council faces and yet is still happy to endorse turning her back on £30 million worth of savings and £57 million of net present value that we could return. Councillor Jones mentioned that Alconbury Station, and that it was included in the report, but I wish to emphasise it was not included in the accessibility assessment. Alconbury Station was not included in the scoring matrix, and suggested that the hub may have a positive impact on healthy living in Northstowe. I'm not sure this council chamber adds to the healthy living of the people of surrounding Shire Hall, but we've heard an impassioned speech from Councillor Hudson about that healthy lifestyle that is envisaged in the future. Councillor Harrison, a lot of your points related to do nothing, and as Councillor Count pointed out as a point of order to other members, we've already discounted that. We're doing something, so we've got to get our heads around that and move forward with the going forward to a new location. And also mentioned, Councillor Harron, that doing nothing should be considered because there's a changing landscape of local government. I won't embarrass the officer that mentioned it, that said to me that when I was born 31 years ago, they undertook a review of local government, and they've been reviewing ever since. Had we have known there was £30 million that was going to be made available at that point, we would have made the decision to move then and return that money 30 years ago. We simply cannot wait to see what's happening in 30 years' time. Sebastian Kindersley, Councillor Kindersley, sorry, information is wrong. I agree, and it was unfortunate that in one of the statements, Newmarket Population Canada was used rather than Newmarket Suffolk. That was corrected, and the accessibility statement was unaffected by that. The other information was right at the time that the information was available. As we all know, changing timetables, bus timetables, train times will affect those, the accessibility statement, but we have to make a decision at a snapshot in time. If not, we'd constantly be reviewing it and we'd never move forward. And when, Councillor Kinsley, you mentioned that shiny new building, I hope that I'll be able to stand there and look at that shiny new building and think this has generated £30 million worth of saving to support frontline services and £57 million of net present value. And I'll be proud to stand in front of that shiny building if that's what it's generated for this county. I realise the time, Chairman. I will come to the end just with a few other points. And Councillor Williams referring to this cost being foolhardy, presumably on the same basis, Councillor Williams will support this recommendation because it would be foolhardy to turn it back on the potential revenue savings. Councillor van der Ven mentioned young people and accessibility. I can assure you, Councillor van der Ven, had I not had a car, I would not be able to be a councillor in this council chamber. I cannot access this building in a timely fashion if I didn't have a car. So that simply doesn't change. The nature of local democracy is we have to live in our areas, and therefore we do need car access. I just wish to end on a last point, Chair, and that is Councillor Rains correctly identified that the Archdeacon of Huntingdon and Wisbech referred to stewardship and our job in the prayers. And the prayers was that we should take a decision to service the structure of local government. Those comments resonated with me, Chairman, and should resonate with all of us. Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions in spite of what is convenient for us. We have to make decisions for what is good for the people of Cambridgeshire. We've heard the evidence, and to turn your back on it now, in the words of Councillor Williams, would be foolhardy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I've still had no further speakers, so we will go to the electronic vote. And we are voting, just to be clear, on the recommendations on page 6 of your agenda papers. There is A and B. I'll read them out and we'll take them together. We are asked to ratify the decision of the Commercial and Investment Committee of Alconbury as the preferred location of the Council's new headquarters, and authorise the Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Finance Officer, in consultation with the Chair of the Commercial and Investment Committee, to take the necessary steps to acquire the preferred site. Mrs Rowe, can you please take us through the electronic voting?
Would members please press the blue button to indicate they are present? Members in favour of the motion, please press the green button marked plus. Members against the motion, please press the red button marked minus. Members wishing to abstain, please press the yellow button marked with a cross. Chairman, I'm now closing the vote. The result of the vote is 35 votes in favour, 21 against, 1 abstention. The motion is therefore carried.
Thank you very much. Next is item 9, recommendations to full council from the Constitution and Ethics Committee. The first report on pages 21 to 23A is quorum arrangements. Can I ask the Chairman of the Constitution and Ethics Committee, Councillor Maguire, to move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted, and the Vice Chairman, Councillor Reynolds, to second, please.
Chairman, I am pleased to move the recommendations as set out in the quorum arrangements report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any debate on this item? I am taking that as... sorry, Councillor Downs, I just noticed you. You pressed your button.
I didn't. Oh, sorry.
Finally, the second report on pages 24 to 25, item B, is the scheme of delegation. Can I ask the Chairman of the Constitution and Ethics Committee, Councillor Maguire, to move that the recommendation as set out in the report be adopted, and the Vice Chairman, Councillor Reynolds, to second, please.
Chairman, I am pleased to move the recommendation as set out in the scheme of delegation report.
Is there any debate on this item? No. We next move on to item 10. Committee's allocation of seats and substitutes to political groups in accordance with the political balance rules. There has been a recent change in group membership which impacts on the allocation of seats and substitutes on committees to political groups. Members will have received a tabled report which has also been published on the Council's website. I therefore move that the allocation of seats and substitutes on committees to political groups in accordance with the political balance rules as set out in the tabled report under item 10 be approved. Can I please ask the Vice Chairman to second?
Chairman, pleased to second report.
Councillor Nitzinger.
I believe there's a small alteration to the list of published representation, particularly on the pension fund board, which is marked as a Liberal Democrat vacancy and which I believe will be taken by a member of the Labour group.
Is everybody happy
That's what I was told by Michelle.
Is everybody happy to accept that change? Councillor Count?
On the pension fund board, it's marked on this list as a Liberal Democrat vacancy, and in fact it will be taken by a member of the Labour group.
So is everybody happy to agree to the report with that slight amendment, or slight? Nope. Number 11, appointment of the chairwoman and vice chairman or chairwoman of the following. I move that the recommendation for the appointment of the chairman, chairwoman and vice chairman, chairwoman of the policy and service committees as set out on page 32 be approved. I also move that the recommendation for appointment of the chairman or chairwoman of the health and wellbeing board as set out on page 32 be approved. Can I please ask the vice chairman to second?
Chairman, please to second the recommendations.
Thank you. Does everybody agree to this? Councillor Netzinger.
We will not be supporting these chairmen and chairmen and chairwomen or the vice chair or chairwomen, but we don't have any alternative proposals. We understand that they will be put through by the Conservative group. We understand that under a situation where they have majority control, they have the right to do that. But we do not believe that the direction they're taking in this council is in the right direction, and we will be abstaining on that vote. I'm happy for it to be taken by show of hands, if you prefer.
Thank you very much. Can we there, Councillor Bailey?
Thank you, Chairman. I think just like to observe that it's quite amazing that under the no overall control situation, the Liberal Democrat group was quite happy to support the democratic process of this council, and now they seem to have changed their mind.
Councillor Netzinger, quickly, please.
Chairmanships of the various different committees were agreed between the groups, and yes, therefore we were happy to support them. We are not any longer in that situation. They are no longer agreed between the groups, and therefore we will no longer be supporting them.
Thank you very much. I will therefore take this vote by show of hands. Can I ask for those in favour of item 11 as it stands on the paper?
You don't need to count. You don't need to count.
Those against? Those abstaining?
All the rest.
Okay. Thank you very much. That is therefore carried, though. Yeah. Number 12, appointments to outside organisations. Next is item appointments to. There has been a recent change in the group membership which impacts on the appointments to outside organisations. Members will have received a tabled report which has also been published on the Council's website. I therefore move as Chairman the recommendations as set out in the tabled report under item 12 be approved. Can I please ask the Vice Chairman, Councillor Maguire, to second?
Please to second the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any debate on this item? I propose to remove the recommendations with the following appointments. A, appoint Councillor Hickford as the substitute member. B, appoint Councillor Connor from the Conservative Party and Councillor Annette Singer from the Liberal Democrat Party to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and Councillors Joseph and Jenkins as the two substitute members from the same political parties as those appointed. C, appoint Councillor Harrison from the Liberal Democrat Party to the Audit and Governance Committee and Councillor Wilson as the substitute member from the same political party. Can I please ask the Vice Chairman to second?
Please to second the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask by show of hands, is everybody in favour of that recommendation? Thank you. Is there anybody against? Okay, that's unanimous. Number 14, the calendar of County Council meetings. I move that the calendar of meetings of the County Council set out on the agenda be approved. Can I ask the Vice Chairman to second?
Pleased to second the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. That one, basically, is everybody happy with that one? Sorry, I'll start that one again. Item 15. We have two motions that have been submitted. The first motion has been submitted by Councillor Sanderson. Can I please ask Councillor Sanderson to move and speak to his motion as set out on pages 2 and 3 of the Council agenda? And can you please tell me who your seconder is? The Bachelor is seconding and reserving his right to speak. Councillor Sanderson, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would, Chairman. Thank you very much. Won't keep members too long. This really came about as a result of the motion that Councillor Bailey put down at the last council meeting when she spoke of the problem she was having with UK power networks. I think Councillor Shooter mentioned there was something called the Cambridgeshire Highway Authority and Utilities Committee, which coordinates all these things, but there doesn't seem to be a great deal of member input towards it. And in fact, if you read our brief, it says, with larger works, members may be invited to attend specific meetings. I think members, not all members obviously, but I think members should be entitled to attend all of those meetings, and more than just one member. I think we should spread it around the political groups. I think we need to formalise this process. Delighted to see then that there's a recommendation or a suggestion in our brief that the minutes are not currently published, but they could be made available to members if desired. I think they should be made available to all members and to the public. So really I'm just asking that we formalise this process. There's a lot of interest in this topic. At our member brief on Friday, we had a long discussion, and it did relate in part to the utility companies. So I would like to propose this.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the speakers on the motion from Councillor Sanderson? Any speakers? Please no, Councillor Shooter.
Thank you, Chairman. I've looked at this motion quite carefully and consulted with officers on it, and it has always been very much an operational meeting, this one, an operational meeting between officers and officers of other organisations. The feeling generally is that the free flow of information would probably be hindered by member involvement. I'm quite satisfied that that is the case. I can't see any real advantage to having member involvement. I do agree that it might be useful to see the minutes of these meetings, and they are available and they can be published if required. But the Streetworks team have got a process for informing members. I've actually taken quite an interest in that recently, because what I have noticed is that as the local member, you do get told of any actions that are going on. And quite often it's a good idea to look at those when they come in and discuss them with the local parish council, because quite often they propose diversion routes that are frankly completely impractical. But I think to have a committee and for us all to attend that would serve no purpose whatsoever. So what I would recommend is that members look at those when they come through to them. I have asked officers to make absolutely sure that those do go out to members so they can have a look, consult with your parish councils, make sure that it's an appropriate route, and that will solve the problem. But I would not support this being a formalised committee with member involvement.
Thank you very much. Before I call you Councillor Batchelor, are there... There are none, so basically, Councillor Batchelor, if you would like to say a few words.
No, it's all right. Well, I was hoping for slightly more debate on this, Chairman, before I came to the microphone, but there we go, that's the way it is. So I think the thrust of this motion is to achieve more joined-up thinking across the highway spectrum. Operating and working on the highway can be a challenging and often dangerous occupation. We, as the local responsible highways authority in this county, have a duty towards assisting and protecting these people. I believe this motion can only do good as setting up a meeting every 3 months with our partners with the aim of creating a more holistic approach to highways work, and the County Council being the facilitator of this particular meeting must surely shine a positive light onto this local authority, Chairman. And I think it's as simple as that. I think it's a positive thing, and I think we should pass this motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stark, would you like to say a few words?
Madam Chairman, I think Councillor Shooter slightly misunderstood the motion here. I'm not suggesting that we have another committee. If this meeting is going ahead anyway, which it clearly is, then there's no reason why a couple of members can't attend on behalf of the Economy Environment Committee and the Highways and Community and Infrastructure Committee and report back and therefore publish those minutes. It's perfectly straightforward. The reason why there needs to be member input is, of course, we're elected to represent the people of Cambridgeshire. The people of Cambridgeshire are paying these utility companies to do these works. As we heard from Councillor Bailey last time in Hadnam, they're obviously not doing it as well as they could do at times, and I think member input might just help the process. We don't need to spend ages on another committee meeting. We just need to make sure that members are fully inputted, fully linked into this situation.
Thank you. I think Councillor Shooter says about local members involved. We'll take your motion as it is now, and if you want to raise any further with the committee chairman, then please do, yeah? We will now go to the vote on this motion. We'll take it by electronic vote.
Would members please press the blue button to indicate they are present? Members in favour of the motion, please press the green button marked plus. Members against the motion, please press the red button marked minus. Members wishing to abstain, please press the yellow button marked with a cross. Chairman, I'm now closing the vote. The result of the vote is 23 votes in favour, 33 against, no abstentions. The motion is therefore lost.
A point of order, Chairman. This number of voters seems to be different from the last, and the last number of voters didn't accord with the number of people in the room. Chairman, you've mentioned this before. I think it's absolutely incumbent that everybody in this room votes either one way, for, against, or abstain. I cannot see it's acceptable that we sit here and take advantage of the electronic system by not even marking yourself as present.
Okay, maybe that's something that myself and Mrs. Rowe can look into for future. Councillor Harrison, you'd like to make a point?
Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, if it's all right to stand up and berate people for not voting, then I think it's all right for me to stand up now and defend people as free in this chamber. And I just think, you know, what is this? What is this sort of fascism that exists, that people have to do things your way? We all have to agree with you. We all have to agree with you. Otherwise, we get, you know, people are disappointed in us. You do not have to vote. We have free people in this council chamber, and anybody from any party doesn't have to vote unless they want.
Very much. I'm inclined to move on. We've still got a lot of business to carry on. Quickly.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm not asking everybody to agree. I'm asking everybody to do their duty and cast a vote one way or the other or abstain. It's not acceptable to just simply say that we can turn up and not cast our vote. Yes.
I'm sorry, but you know, this is just too much. The notion that Councillor Schumann is the arbiter of what our duty is or isn't in this chamber is simply wrong. We are free people. We bring our own judgments into this chamber, and we'll do it like we like. And we won't be berated for not doing our duty by him, thank you.
Councillor Count, would you like to make a quick word? Then clearly if Councillor Singer does.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are obviously conflicting views on this subject. I'm surprised by anyone that would take the Queen's shilling in the way of council allowance to sit through debates and not actually put their views down one way or another, or to abstain, which seems to be, I'm not going on. However, rather than carrying on with debates on the subject, I think the way forward is to actually tackle this through the Constitution and Ethics Committee, where everybody can have their input as to what the differing views are, if that's acceptable. Thank you.
And then we have got to move on.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Come on, let's move on. Quickly. No, we are definitely moving on.
Just very quickly, I think in view of the explanation that Mike Jones has, could we have that entered into the minutes, please, that he should have actually voted, he wished to vote for the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bowden, but we are now running behind schedule.
It is important that the votes in this chamber are correctly recorded and that we have confidence that the results are correct. Given the comment just made by Councillor Shellens, I think it is absolutely vital that consideration be given to ensure that all members present either vote for, against or abstain, so that we can be sure that everything is correctly recorded. I'm sure it will be considered by the relevant committee.
Thank you very much. We've had a bit of say on that. We will now move forward. Right. I am inclined to go and take the next motion if everybody's agreeing to still keep going. Okay. That concludes discussion of the first motion. We now move to the second motion submitted by Councillor Bailey. Can I please ask Councillor Bailey to move and speak to her motion as set out on pages 3 and 4 of the Council agenda? Who is your seconder?
Councillor. Do you wish me to move and speak to my motion, or just move the motion?
Move the motion.
Okay, I so moved. Thank you, Chairman. An estimated 8.3 billion tonnes of virgin plastic has been produced in the world to date. And as of 2015, of the approximately 6.3 billion tonnes of plastic produced, only 9% had been recycled, with 12% having been incinerated. And so 79% was either in landfill or left in the natural environment. Worldwide, there are 1 million plastic drinks bottles bought every single minute, so that's 20,000 per second. And there were 480 billion plastic drinks bottles sold in 2016. It never goes away, plastic. It's with us forever. And as the motion states, if all the plastic bottles that aren't collected for recycling in the UK each year were placed end to end, they'd go around the world 31 times every single year from just the UK. That's an enormous amount of plastic which is damaging our seas and ecosystems, and that's only the plastic bottles. It's clear that wide-scale change is required across the whole of society to reduce human reliance on plastics, to keep the plastics we do use in the economy for as long as possible, and to keep all plastic out of our oceans and seas. But actually, Chairman, it's not the big sweeping gestures that will ultimately fix this problem. Rather, it's the small, everyday, conscious acts carried out by individuals across Cambridgeshire, throughout Britain and the world, that collectively will get the result our planet needs. But it's important to start somewhere and to make it as easy as possible for people to change their habits. And with this motion, I'm asking the County Council to sign up to change our own DNA, to influence as many other organisations and people as we can, and to regularly and publicly test ourselves on how we're doing. It'd be nice if people could listen to my motion. It isn't easy. Ever since I started thinking about bringing this motion, I've found myself feeling regularly thirsty. Being unprepared without a cup and feeling reluctant to buy a plastic bottle of water, going thirsty can sometimes seem like the more attractive option. There's a very long way to go to create the infrastructure and environment where doing the right thing becomes habit, where people don't have to think about it, they can just do it. Until then, we have to keep at it relentlessly, seeking to change supplier mentality, to get the right infrastructure in place, to get to a point where it's easy for people, where the right behaviours are just the norm. This motion is not about having long action plans written on reams of paper. Rather, this is about changing the culture and the DNA of the entire organisation, including members, staff, so that every person within it takes conscious decisions every single day about their use of plastics and alternative materials, both on their own behalf, but also on behalf of the organisation as a whole. It will be for the Chief Executive, as the motion requires, to report back on how well her organisation is responding to the challenge. Having taken a very similar motion to East Cambs District Council recently, the Lib Dem group there expressed concern about the date of 2042. I'd like to make it clear, just in case they're confused again, that the date of 2042 relates to the government's national plan to achieve zero avoidable plastic waste. This motion calls on the council to begin work right now, and if the motion is supported, we will hear back on progress in 6 months' time at the Health Committee. I do hope that this motion will get the unanimous support of council today so that we can present a united example to our residents in Cambridgeshire, and I appeal to our opposition colleagues to please support this motion and to play your part in helping to bring about the changes that are so desperately needed.
We now move to the amendment, which is proposed by Councillor Dupre and seconded by Joan Whitehead. I will take it. Councillor Dupre, would you like to put your amendment forward?
Right. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I was pleased to see the amendment from Councillor Whitehead that was submitted, and I was very pleased that we were able to agree that we would combine our amendments and move this single amendment jointly. I think not only, obviously, pleased that we were able to reach agreement in principle anyway, but it also, I think, makes for a smoother discussion. So I'm very pleased we've been able to achieve that between us. There can be no doubt whatsoever that the pollution of our seas and shores by tons of discarded plastic needs to be stopped, and that it can only be stopped by a series of actions by individuals, organisations, businesses and governments. Action starts at home, and it's right that we should all be considering what we can do to make that difference. What products should be used less often? What substitutions can we make? What items can we do without altogether? What can we do now? And what will take time to achieve over the longer term? And what do we need to press others to do because it is outside our remit? To that end, our amendment to this motion seeks to achieve 4 objectives. Firstly, it aims to press the case to government for a charge to be brought in for disposable coffee cups, similar to the one introduced in 2015 for plastic bags. People in the UK throw away 2.5 billion disposable coffee cups every year. That's 10,000 every 2 minutes, often under the mistaken impression that they will be recycled. Technically, they can be, but only in a highly specialised recycling facility, of which there are only 3 in the UK, processing only a very tiny number of cups. I think the figure is 4 in 1,000. The number of discarded single-use cups in the UK is set to increase by 1/3 by the year 2030. There are good signs from some retailers. Costa Coffee has committed to recycling 500 million coffee cups a year by 2020. Starbucks has pledged £7 million to develop a fully recyclable cup, following pressure from campaigners, while Waitrose has pledged to phase out disposable coffee cups from its stores by this autumn. This is all welcome, but we need more, and we need it faster. Within just 9 months of the introduction of a 5p plastic bag charge in October 2015, plastic bag use had plummeted by over 85%. That's why the government needs to be pressed to spread the success of that initiative to disposable coffee cups, and why we as a council should be in the front of that campaign. Secondly, our amendment aims to eliminate the use of single-use plastic cups on county council premises, something which should be straightforward and quick to achieve, and was the thrust of the Labour amendment that has now formed part of this joint amendment. Thirdly, it aims to initiate an information campaign to help individuals and organisations across Cambridgeshire play their part. Many residents want to make a difference but don't know how. This council is well placed to fund and support such a campaign, perhaps even by working with the voluntary sector to refine a bid to the council's Innovate and Cultivate Fund. The fund's remit includes waste projects, but we've seen disappointingly few submitted. It would be really exciting to see local groups bringing their ideas to the council for funding and other forms of support. I've seen some tremendous local information campaigns, often among island communities, such as the one I come from, where plastic in the sea is a more immediate threat. And I really want to see Cambridgeshire up there with the best. We've heard an awful lot about changing the DNA, changing our DNA. I would have thought that in a place like Cambridge that specialised in genomics, it ought to be patently obvious that we can't change our DNA. But what we can do is decide what we're going to do. And one of the things that we can do is decide what actions we're going to take. And That's why we believe, fourthly, that the Economy and Environment Committee is the right body to receive and consider an action plan, pulling ideas together, incorporating input from others, and tracking the progress of the Council and the community. It would be very sad indeed if our ambition was constrained to the content of this motion. A proper plan of action, built with real community input, community ideas, public involvement, could be absolutely transformational, and it's disappointing that this motion, as it's written, closes off so much of that. This isn't about reams of paper. It's perfectly acceptable to have action plans on whole reams of things. It helps you to know what you're going to do, and it makes it clear what you're doing and what you're tracking and how ambitious you're being, and I think that that's something we should welcome. Finally, there was a statement that we had misunderstood something because there was a date of 2042, and yes, that indeed that is the government's target date, but sadly it's also the only target date in this motion to achieve anything, and we think that there are things that we should be aiming to do, longer term, medium term, and to have some dates, some commitment, some actual real detail in this would be very, very helpful indeed. With these amendments, this motion has the potential to make a real difference here in Cambridgeshire, well beyond this chamber, and I do hope that members will support it.
Hang on a moment. Sorry, Councillor Count. No, Councillor Whitehead is seconding, and she's reserved her right to speak. Sorry?
I would like to second it now, rather than reserve my right.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would very much like to second this motion, and I'm not going to repeat what has been said, but I do want to draw attention to the things that I put in the motion from the Labour group. And it looks at the scrutiny of public bodies. There's been quite a lot of coverage in the newspapers on the issue of plastic cups. For example, the NHS has used 600 million disposable plastic cups since 2013, which is 300,000 per day. Government departments were also asked to say what was their use of plastic cups. They didn't actually know how many plastic cups they had actually used. Campaigners have argued that this demonstrates how out of control our relationship is with single-use plastic cups. So public bodies are under scrutiny, and therefore that does include us. And I strongly support the motion which says the County Council should be doing all it can to eliminate the use of plastic cups. But in the meantime, you can all play a part by joining the Bring Your Own Cup campaign. Even Starbucks and other organisations are encouraging people to bring their own cups rather than using their, at the moment, non-recyclable cups. And of course, where there's a need, there is always enterprise. Here we have a visual aid. This is a replica, if you like, of the Starbucks type cup, but made out of bamboo, properly resourced. And this one in particular has been designed by William Morris, as you can see. And the campaign is that you should invest, although you don't necessarily have to invest in one of these, bring your own cup to Starbucks or wherever, and to bring your own cup here to council meetings and when you come to the council. As I say, it doesn't have to be fancy, as Councillor Bailey and Councillor Ness-Singer are currently demonstrating. It can just be any old cup you had lurking in the back of your cupboard. And the reason I suggest it is it's because something that we can do now. It may seem like a small thing, but small steps put together make big steps and make a difference. And so I really would ask you to actually support that. Even if you don't support this amendment, and I gather the Conservatives are not going to support it, I really hope you will all remember and bear in mind and join the Bring Your Own Cup campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Count. Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. As I said, I'm quite disappointed to see this amendment in front of us, because we've spent a morning, biggest debate of the day today was on Shire Hall, and I described how we went from a thought that something might be a good idea through a process to see if it's a good idea to an actual result demonstrating that it clearly was a good idea. And then what we have is we have a credible motion from Councillor Bailey, a motion of action about doing something to charge the Chief Executive with coming back with a plan about what to do. But instead of that, whilst this morning on Shire Hall we were belittled for the information not being good enough, or we can't make a decision now, we straight away jump to conclusions because you want to get it on the paper as to what's the best thing to do in every single case here. And I'm just going to highlight the, eliminate the use of plastic polystyrene cups because members, etc., bring your own. So what do we do when the people who visit, oh, you haven't bought a cup, you can't have a glass of water. Oh, you can have a biodegradable one. Member, you didn't bring yours, you better put that down. You know, where are we going to go with that? There's no thought process in here. But probably the worst one of all, just throwing something up in there, through a council-funded information campaign. Brilliant. We could all write that down. How much did you have in mind? Well, I heard some figures. No, I didn't. I mean, was it 5,000, 50,000, 5 million, 50 million? How much? Where was the money going to come from? Who was going to pay for it? What was the actual advertising campaign, the media campaign, that was actually going to put a budget to that? Or why not, if it is a good idea, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea, why not, under the action plan that was there, allow the Chief Executive to come up with a plan in 6 months and actually say, you know what, if we spent some money wisely, we can actually come up with something. So what you've done here is a series of let's jump on the bandwagon. The party of inaction has tried to jump on the bandwagon of the party of action because they didn't bring forward something themselves. And it's sad, it would have been quite possible if some of these ideas were actually good and implementable today, but by uniting them all with some good, reasonably good ones, with some absolutely unthought through ones, it's obviously going to get voted against. So sorry, but we will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting this amendment, and I think this talk of an action plan is far too specific, far too limiting, and far too prescriptive. I've recently become fully aware of all the excellent work we're doing on paint recycling, and we're collecting paint from the household waste recycling centres and using it through 159 charities, 3 social housing associations and 3,000 households. Now, if you're making a list and you're having an action plan, you don't allow broad thinking. Now, surely the purpose of an action plan is to be prescriptive, and it wouldn't include the good ideas like the paint or something else, because it's not on the list. I think what we're trying to do here is to open people's minds and might make them think about what we throw into the earth, what we don't, and be broad-minded. And like the paint scheme, it's thinking about the environment, and that we must do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. I have to say I'm mildly astonished by the flannel that's been thrown at us by for making some suggestions for actual actions in this motion. I am very pleased that we've had a motion on plastics and reducing plastics use brought to this council. I think that a huge number of people around the country, and certainly me included, have been made far more aware of the massive problem that is caused by waste plastics since the Blue Planet programme, showing the impact of plastics on our oceans. And I spent a certain amount of time during April this year picking up plastics on beaches, and I was absolutely appalled by how quickly you can pick up an absolutely vast amount of plastic along the shoreline. It is horrific. So I welcome the motion as it is, but I am disappointed that it doesn't contain any action other than we'll ask the Chief Executive to do something. The proposals that are being brought forward in the amendment are relatively mild. We would ask for the government to introduce a 5p charge on plastic, on non-recyclable plastic cups. This has already been discussed nationally. It would be a very, very reasonable thing for this council to support that move. It would be a very reasonable thing for this council to try and reduce its own use of plastic cups. And it would be a very reasonable decision for us to say that we would actually put some of our own money behind an information campaign. If you reject all of those options, it simply shows up this motion as being all talk and no action. And that is our serious concern about it. Given that you are unlikely to support it from the tutting from across the chamber, we will have to wait and see whether there is any action that comes forward from the Chief Executive's proposals in 6 months' time. But we could be starting on this now. We do not need to wait. Why would we not get on with it?
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there must be some sort of serious misunderstanding going on. Honestly, I'm so saddened by this. Everyone in this chamber, by the sounds of it, is supporting the plan to try and get rid of plastics and have exactly what the motion is called, which is a purge on plastics. That is absolutely what it means. It's about having a purge on plastics. We're not going to sit around and not do anything for 6 months. Work starts tomorrow, and if I was the Chief Executive receiving this instruction, if it goes through today, the very first thing that I would be doing, because it is the most visible, is getting rid of the plastic drinks cups in and around the building and replacing them with glasses and other better alternatives. There is absolutely no reason that we won't be doing that. That is exactly what this motion says. That is the instruction to the Chief Executive. The problem with listing one specific example like that is that, for example, your amendment doesn't include the drinks machine. It says that we will replace the plastic and polystyrene cups at the water points. So does that mean we'll be leaving the cups at the drinks machines? No, and therein lies the flaw with this problem. Will we be getting rid of the plastic knives and forks in the canteen? Well, under my desire and direction to the Chief Executive, yes, we will.
We have a point of order, I believe. Hang on. Councillor Whitehead, sorry. Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Okay, but it doesn't include the plastic knives and forks that exist in the canteen. I could let...
Let's just vote it down.
All right, the plastic knives and forks under the Chief Executive's chair that got left there by mistake. The point is that we could have a list that would be 20 pages long of where plastic exists in this building. What I'm trying to do with this motion is to say we all agree that single-use plastics are a scourge on our society and our environment, and we're all signing up to get rid of them. That work starts right now, and it's about creating pressure in our organisation from the Chief Executive downwards and from people on the front line upwards. We're all signing up to it. That's what it's about. I don't want great big long lists that we tick off that miss lots of different things. And what I want is to charge the Chief Executive with getting this throughout the DNA of our organisation. And to say that we can't change our DNA, it's just a saying. It's about changing the culture of the organisation. That's what I want this to do. And I absolutely trust our Chief Executive to embrace this and take it forward and make it happen. And I trust our brilliant communications team to put the message out there to the public and the residents of Cambridgeshire that this is what we want everybody to do. And frankly, lots of people out there are already doing this. So I think it's really sad that the opposition parties can't just embrace the motion that I've decided to put here today because they're annoyed they didn't do it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. We will now, I have no further speakers. Everybody seems, we will now, Derek Giles. Councillor Giles, moving to the vote.
That's why. I'm getting on form. Right. It must be the contents of the bottle.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Chairman. I cannot understand. I nearly said a point of clarification to Councillor Bailey, because on the last bullet point on here, it says eliminate the use of plastic straws on county council premises, and the added words is and single-use plastic cups. So you're saying it shouldn't be specific, but you are being specific, and this is what's causing the confusion. I really cannot. I will be supporting this because it's not a political thing. It's an add-on. You know, I understand council leaders' willingness or want to make this their motion, but I know it is your motion. But I think it should be the whole motion of the whole council.
Yeah, so do we.
So really,
yeah,
really,
agreed.
why?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let Councillor Giles speak. Councillor Giles.
Cut that 5 seconds extra on mine. Yeah, so I really cannot see anything against any of these things, and I'm not convinced.
Hang on one meeting, please. Let Councillor Giles finish his speech.
Oh, thank you. Okay, that's the way to do it. Right, as I say, you know, I would like, if it's going to fail, for further amendments to bring in some of these points for the substantive motion. But please, let's have one thing clear. Why are you saying plastic straws and not saying single-use plastic cups? Councillor Bailey, I'll give you the right to return the speech.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giles. We will now move to an electronic vote on the amendment.
How crazy.
The amendment
goes out the window.
Councillor Dupre and seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Can you please take us through the voting?
Would members please press the blue button to indicate they are present? Members in favour of the amendment, please press the green button marked plus. Members against the amendment, please press the red button marked minus. Members wishing to abstain, please press the yellow button marked with a cross. Chairman, I'm now closing the vote. Chairman, the result of the vote is 21 votes in favour, 32 against, no abstentions. The amendment is therefore lost.
Thank you very much. We will now go back to the substantive motion as proposed by Councillor Bailey and seconded by Councillor Hunt. Can I ask if there are any speakers on the substantive motion? Councillor Whitehead.
The Labour Group, nevertheless, will be supporting the substantive motion. Thank you.
I would like to thank Councillor Bailey for putting this motion forward. I was writing about it when I got your electronic version, so you're always one step ahead. I wasn't a big fan of Mr. Gove when he was involved in education. However, I must say that he has become an eco-warrior, banning ivory coming to the UK, banning microbits, 5p charge on plastic bags, and even picking fights with farmers and landowners. I am sure he even persuaded his colleagues to take up a challenge. 41 Conservatives MPs gave plastic for Lent. I think only when you dare and commit to something like this, you realise the amount of plastic you use on a daily basis and how difficult it is not to use any at all. I will admit, I am a proud vegan conservative. I take the environment extremely serious, and for those that might not know, changing your diet could have a more dramatic impact on the environment than cycling. We are the longest serving party with a robust ideology and principles. If we did not believe in capitalism and free market, there would not be entrepreneurs, and they would not have the opportunity and resources to challenge the status quo of the packaging industry. I admire the creativity of these individuals, making plates from banana leaves, purses made out of pineapple's skin, and creating biodegradable film. Our challenge locally, and I look forward to reading about all the great things the new administration at South Cambridge will do regarding waste disposal, will be to achieve what other countries like Sweden are doing. Sweden recycles and sorts its waste so efficiently that less than 1% ends up in landfills. Sweden is running out of its own garbage, and so I will expect that this will be the case for South Cambridge by 2022, if not before. Finally, I will just conclude by saying that we Conservatives are committed to the environment, and for this reason, and all the above, I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Giles.
Just whether I could put on a very, very small amendment to this. Why? Why? Why not?
Just ask her to add something, Derek. Ask her to add something.
Well, yeah. My amendment, thank you. Right, yeah. I'm sure that everybody will agree, yeah. It's on the third bullet point.
Give him a chance. Not constitutionally, I'm getting that from both sides. I'm ever so sorry.
No, an amendment to the substantive motion. Why not? Which standing
Ask the
order?
monitoring officer.
Standing orders say that no amendment may be moved at the meeting except where the chairman or woman of the council may permit at his or her absolute discretion in exceptional circumstances and to ensure the efficient or proper discharge of the council's business a further amendment or amendments to be moved. That's what it says.
That's a shame.
It's a shame because everybody's... I'm trying to go with everybody.
Yeah,
sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. There are just 2 points that I'd like to make. This is a really very serious matter, and there are 3 ways, really, that one can look at this issue of the influx of plastics into our environment. And one way is that if it's intentional, which it is on the part of companies that produce this material, then it's intentional destruction of the environment. There is another way that it can be criminal, actually, and that is where it is recklessly allowing plastics into the environment. And the third way is potential criminal negligence, where people or a company knows the consequences of their conduct and nonetheless they persist with it. And there are arguments that environmental crimes can be classified as crimes against humanity, and that this, that is the release of plastics into the ocean, and so particularly, could be classified in that way. There is one aspect that I would like to raise in particular, because Councillor Shooter and I have discussed it in the past, and that is that plastics can be used positively in terms of repairing the roads and repairing potholes. Already in Cumbria, there is a project going ahead of using plastic for the roads, and I would simply, we could have put this forward as an amendment to the motion. However, it was better, in my opinion, for us to proceed in this way, which for me to make a plea to Councillor Shooter as the Chair of Highways, that we actually do progress this idea and perhaps approach the government so that we here in Cambridgeshire can be another part of the United Kingdom that does proceed with the project of using plastics for the roads and for the potholes. And to make it very clear that we, at least in this part of this side of the House, do passionately care about those who live outside the boundaries of Cambridge City, the Fen roads would be very well dealt with if we use plastics for them, because they do have, as I understand it, a great deal of subsidence and movement because of the changing climate and because of their location. And if the plastic was used, particularly for the roads in the Fens, then we would have good roads for our people out in the Fens, and we would also be saving money for this authority, because the roads would not require the repairs that they require at the present time. So I thank Councillor Bailey for putting this motion to the Council, and I also request, as I said, that we on the Highways Committee do actually progress the idea of using plastic, or enabling a project to come forward where we could use the plastic. And I would suggest that it first be used on the roads and the Fens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shooter. Follow.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, that's very spooky, because Councillor Scott and I have had no collusion in this. We've not spoken about this other than some time ago about those roads, but obviously Councillor Scott couldn't make the member seminar last Friday. Well, if you had been able to make it, you would have seen that we are indeed doing those things. We have open discussions with MacRuber. I have personally spoken to MacRuber in Dumfries, in Scotland. Our Scottish member has already gone back to Scotland. So, we are in discussions with them now. We are looking to do a joint project with Peterborough, where we're looking to experiment on the actual plastic roads. And we are also looking to use used rubber tyres car tyres in our Fenland road building programme. So we're looking at both of those things. I hope that we can use them. The actual percentage of plastic that you would put into the road is actually very, very tiny, but it's a move forward, and we can use our own plastic from the county that can't currently be recycled that's going into landfill. So we're certainly doing that. But I wasn't intending to speak on that at all. I was just going to say I thoroughly support this motion. I think it's exactly the right tone, this motion. I didn't agree with what was put forward by other parties, because it is all about changing people's attitudes. It's really important that we get everybody on board with this, and forcing people to do things, making it more prescriptive is not the way to do it. I have a personal bugbear with balloons. I've got a real hate of balloons. Now, that's not a phobia. It's a dislike, because I grew up in the countryside. My father was a farmer. I have seen the effects of a balloon eaten by a cow. It kills it. It's as simple as that, and it's an agonizing death. I think, personally, that balloons should be banned, because if you get a piece of plastic and throw it on the ground, you can be prosecuted. If you get a piece of plastic or rubber in a balloon and send it in the air, you can't. That is bizarre. That balloon floats across the countryside, pollutes the countryside, floats out to sea, but it is about education. Banning these things won't be popular. I saw a lot of people, when I said ban balloons, have them banned, etc. Can't do that. We need to educate people. We need to explain to people that if you send that balloon into the air, it will land somewhere, and it will do an awful lot of damage. So I think the motion was exactly right. The pitch is right. Let's all start thinking about it. Every time we see a bit of plastic or a derivative of plastic, let's think about what we're doing. And I think that's what we should do. We're starting on a journey, and I hope that as I get older, I will find less and less rubbish out on the farm as I'm walking across. Since a child, I've walked across the farm, picking up plastic, picking up balloons. I see the Countryside Alliance is launching a campaign. You can all apply to the Countryside Alliance. You don't have to be members. You will get a Hessian sack. You can then, on your walk through the countryside, on your footpaths, or wherever you go in the countryside, you can pick up rubbish and put it in that sack. Please join it. It's at the beginning of June. Go on the Countryside Alliance's website and sign up for that, because it will really do good for our countryside. I will thoroughly support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Chairman, a number of Conservatives have spoken today and referred to we Conservatives and all Conservatives. I think I'm a Conservative, and I don't entirely agree with everything that my colleagues believe. I will not be claiming now to be speaking on behalf of all Conservatives. It's just my opinion, and my opinion is that you can believe in protecting the environment without thinking that the way to do it is to ban things, and you can believe in protecting the environment without thinking that you have to ever increase a nanny state to do it. Now, I will be voting for this motion because, primarily, I think it has good intentions. There's a lot in it I don't like. I don't like the reactionary language. I don't like some of the proposals. And I think we often forget that the reason plastic is so well used is because it is affordable and because free markets have deemed that. And there is a cost. There is a cost to talking down plastics in every respect, and that cost is borne by the most vulnerable, who are actually the people who use very cheap disposable plastics. So I think there are other ways and other methods that we should also explore to try and protect our environment. And for that reason, I will be reservedly voting for this motion, but I do want to say that we do not, all Conservatives, have exactly the same view on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor van der Ven.
Yes, I would like to thank Councillor Bailey for bringing this motion forward, and also, is it Sir David Attenborough's Blue Planet programme, I think had a profound impact on this country, and the comments after that programme aired that you could see all over social media was how sick people felt to have not realised the behaviour that they had and weren't thinking about. You mentioned culture change. The 5p tax on plastic bags has had a huge impact on the use of plastic bags, and it's made people aware at supermarkets and everywhere else that they don't need them. So I think sometimes actually a specific action, a specific prescriptive action is really helpful, because when it comes to plastics, the minute you start thinking about it, you just can't believe that it's everywhere in your life. So I'm sorry that some of these actions haven't been incorporated into the motion, and I'm sure that David Attenborough would be thrilled to know that we're all arguing about exactly how we're going to frame this.
Thank you. Councillor Giles, you've already spoken once, so you can't speak again. I'm sorry. I can't set a precedent, otherwise everybody's going to want it.
So a question whether I could put a...
no, you can't, sorry.
No. That's when I spoke first time. I wish to speak to the amendment now.
You pressed this, you didn't rise on a...
Okay, go on.
Okay, yeah, right. No, the first time I wanted to put a motion, I didn't speak at all for or against the motion. For a point of explanation, this little rascal has been filled at least 6 times, and I did pick it up empty, right? I'm not a health freak. I will be supporting this. I found this quite exciting, this motion, and I will be supporting it. But I do feel that it does not go far enough, and I hope that the things like, on the bullet point, eliminate the use of plastic straws. Oh, big deal. Why not? And single plastic use cups, like we said. Number 7 is a little bit confusing, and I would like a little bit of explanation about this one. Eliminate plastic water bottles and offer tap water at events. What are people going to drink out of? I just like that, but I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to say that we've already put this into action on the Conservative side. Myself, Councillor Bates and Councillor Hickford are members of ESPO. We've already brought this subject up there and to eliminate plastics and how we're going to work with schools in the future, especially with regards to glitter and how that actually impacts on the sea life as well. Very difficult thing to do, but it's something we've got to look at. So this is being reacted already into a certain degree with our neighbouring partnership authorities. And we want to thank Councillor Bailey for bringing this forward. And with regards to plastic cups or bring your own cups, I get a lot of ribbon for this, but I just bring a flask and I have a cup of tea. And that's the easiest way.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I will obviously be supporting the motion on the basis that, flawed though it is, a flawed motion is better than no motion at all. I do, however, feel desperately disappointed that this is an opportunity missed and an opportunity that we could have used to engage so many more people already in the debate around this chamber, from that side of the chamber as well as this. There have been ideas flung up for discussion that would be worthy of exploration, and there isn't really a mechanism to do that properly, because all of that has been closed off and we end up with just an annual report to the council. There could have been an opportunity for real engagement of everybody, bringing ideas, debating, prioritising, sorting things through, deciding what we could actually go out there and do and communicate with our residents about. I'm also somewhat surprised that the Economy and Environment Committee, and the clue is in the name, has been written out of this whole process, as if it had nothing to do with them. That seems to me a real surprise, whereas Health, I'm not now, as of this morning, a member of the Health Committee, but I have been on the Health Committee and I have enjoyed very much being part of the Health Committee, but this isn't our usual business, or their usual business at all. And it does seem very odd to put it to the Health Committee, ignore the remit of the Environment Committee completely, that deals with waste and disposal of waste all the time. Seems very odd to me, but it is what we have. We now don't have anything better, so I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I can't resist this. Councillor Dupre thinks she's got this is a missed opportunity. Well, of course, her party always agree with having a second go, and if you don't get the first one, let's have another go at it. So you will have another go. Perhaps everybody doesn't understand what they're going to be voting for. However, we cannot go on pouring 40% of our waste into the ground. It's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable to behave and in a way that 40% of what we generate in our house goes into the ground. We've got to start thinking about this and focusing. And for clarification, I know that the government policy is to completely eliminate this waste in 25 years' time. This motion is about starting that journey now and starting to think about it. It will be a long journey, it will be a hard journey, and it'll be a long time before we get rid of every plastic knife underneath the chief executive's desk and things like that. Yes, it will. But we start now. We start in our schools, we start in our hospitals, we start in our places of work and our homes, and we change our heart, and we start thinking about it, and we start thinking all the way along the line, how can we avoid using this disposable plastic? It's no good. We've got to get rid of it. I think what we're doing at H&CI is really good. I was fascinated to see that bales of used tyres could be used as a hardcore for a road. I mean, it may not work, but we're thinking about it. I think we must broaden our minds and really make the world a different place for the next generation. Some of us are getting nearer handing over the baton to the next generation, and you can see from my grey hairs that I'm probably there. But we must care about the next generation. And I think this is the start of a journey, and I'm very proud that in this chamber it's been the start of a Conservative journey.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks very much. Yes, we've all got some changes to make, haven't we? And I personally am going to make a pledge now that I shan't be bringing any more plastic-lined or plastic cups into this chamber. And it is just a little bit hard to sit right across here as one is listening and looking, watching the people speaking from the other side. A lot of sanctimoniousness going on. And in front of me on the front bench here are 2 plastic-lined cups that are sitting here with apparently no embarrassment. If I promise never to bring a plastic-lined cup into this chamber again, are the front bench of the Conservatives, who are so proud of this amendment, going to do the same?
I think we'll all try. Basically, okay. I have no further speakers, so I will ask Councillor Bailey to sum up. Then we will go to the electronic vote.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's been a good debate, and I think the lack of understanding that these are actually plastic-lined, which I was aware of, but an awful lot of people aren't. And so I think, you know, the debate has highlighted quite a few things, and I think we won't be seeing many of these around in the future. I just wanted to pay tribute to Sue Grace, who helped me with a lot of background to this motion, and she started thinking about the implications of implementing this motion already, and she's done an enormous amount of work on it already, so I wanted to say thank you to her. Councillor Giles, your point about plastic straws in the motion, being one example when not accepting others, absolutely makes the point, and I completely agree with you. It might have been better not to include a plastic straw example. The reason it got in there is because it was somebody's particular pet project, and it's had a lot of highlighting nationally at the moment about the number of plastic straws, because it's a way of highlighting the plastics problem in general, and I think that's a point that we can all take. You know, some of us care really passionately, apparently, about plastic cups, others about plastic straws. The point is, we're all in agreement that it's all bad, so let's just get on with it and do it. So point taken on that. I think it's great that people are coming up with all these different suggestions, and what I would like is that all of these suggestions are put to the Chief Executive, who, if this goes through, which I hope it will unanimously, is now charged with making this happen throughout the organisation. So please put your suggestions through to the Chief Executive, whose responsibility it will be to make the changes and make this actually happen. I, for one, will certainly not be ever blowing up a plastic balloon ever again. You know, probably lots of us in this room haven't seen a cow dying by having a plastic balloon put into its stomach, and we're now all aware of that situation where we probably weren't before. So for that reason alone, it's been a good discussion. So I very much look forward to the Chief Exec's report on what has been done coming forward in 6 months' time. It is a report about actions that will be taken starting tomorrow, and I will be looking forward to that report. And I think it's absolutely fantastic that there's such an evangelical air in this room, and that we are all united in our hatred of plastics going forward, and that will be translated into positive change across Cambridgeshire and hopefully further afield.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we now move to the electronic vote, Mrs Rowe, on the substantive motion?
Would members please press the blue button to indicate they are present? Members in favour of the motion, please press the green button marked plus. Members against the motion, please press the red button marked minus. Members wishing to abstain, please press the yellow button marked with a cross. Chairman, I'm closing the vote. The result of the vote is unanimous, 53 votes in favour.
Can't vote against it, can we?
Thank you. That's unity, that's good. Next, we consider item 16A, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority and Overview and Scrutiny Committee, oral questions, which will be dealt with in accordance with the protocol set out in Annex 1 of Part 4.1, Council Procedure, Rules of the Council's Constitution. The generic report summarising the decisions made by the Combined Authority's formal committees is included on the Council agenda on pages 38 to 61. The deadline for submitting questions was Tuesday the 8th of May. I have received no questions for Councillor Count, the Council's representative on the Combined Authority. I have also received no questions for Councillors Connor and Nett Singer, the Council's representatives on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We move on to written questions. Responses to the 2 written questions received have been provided to the political groups before the meeting and published on the Council's website. Briefly, before I close the meeting, that does conclude the meeting, but I would like to wish a belated 80th birthday to Councillor Peter Downs, that he celebrated at the beginning of the week, I recall. I noticed you bringing cakes in and didn't offer them round, so I had to find out why. Congratulations. That does conclude the business on today's agenda. Thank you for your contributions.